We're now going to go over substantive contact and feedback. This is, of course, directly related to regular effective contact, which we've covered. But at this point in the course, you've got a lot more familiarity with the tools, and you're putting them into play in your courses. So I'm going to cover some of those tools that we've already learned about, and how we're constructing our courses with those tools to really implement regular effective contact. So let's go through this now. So first, it's very important to keep in mind, I'm not going to tell you what to do. It's still up to you. There is a real respect for every field has its own experts, and you have your own expertise. So we will be using examples from Canvas. The topics that we're going to cover are generally universal. We'll go through that with some of the emails. The tools may be different, but the philosophy is going to be the same. That's the regular effective contact. And you think that through and how it's realized in your course. The workshop is not designed to give you a prescriptive approach to the classes or a way to teach. Rather, it's really to help you comply with the ACCJC, the Federal and Financial Aid and Education Codes that are behind all of this. Okay, you really are the discipline expert, and you've got to make it real. You think of the where the rubber meets the road. Your expertise is going to come into play at each and every step of this, okay? So that's always behind it. Let's jump in. So there are the big five of regular effective contact or regular substantive interactive. There's the threaded discussions. This is where the students respond to a prompt that you've put up, and then they're responding to that in a meaningful way, but also to each other. And that's part of regular effective contact and regular substantive, that they're responding to each other, not just to you. There's class email through the inbox. There's announcements that are posted through the CMS or through, as we know, Canvas, at least once per week. I would urge you to put up announcements 2 to 3 times per week. Not 2 to 3 times per day, because your students will get a little overwhelmed, but they really do need to know about your presence in the class and that you're still there. If you don't engage in announcements, they will flake off. Okay? Timely feedback on student work. This will cover a little bit. This is how fast do you respond to discussion posts, how fast do you respond to emails, how fast do you respond to essays. Okay? Each of them we have general timelines, but again, you're the discipline expert. You're going to know what's best. Instructor prepared e-lectures or instructions in the form of e-lectures to any publisher created materials. These are the things like written, recorded broadcasts, etc. That are combined with other course materials. These are the emails you might put together, or excuse me, the videos you might put together for your students. So you want something in the field that you have produced, again, so that they get a sense of you as an expert in the field, producing real content for them. So there is a bit of a difference, but not much, between regular effective contact and regular substantive interaction. Regular effective contact is the older term. The regular substantive interaction is the new one. Honestly, in my view, it's essentially a rhetorical difference. It doesn't really make a difference, but they're essentially the same thing. But you'll hear regular substantive interaction more commonly, today. The official word, according to the ACCJC, regular and substantive interaction between students and instructor is central in determining whether a course is distance education rather than correspondence education. And again, we as a college, a community college, engage in distance education, not correspondence. So regular substantive interaction, they don't have a checklist of absolutes, these must. They have a checklist of overall things they're going to be looking towards. And they're going to want to see, the ACCJC is going to want to see that these things are taking place in a meaningful way. It's needed in every course that is online or hybrid. Again, you're differentiating yourself from correspondence. It must be demonstrable and documented. What the ACCJC in a very real way means is that when they come on campus, these are going to be deans and vice presidents and faculty from other campuses. They're going to be staying at a local hotel. When they're on campus, though, they're going to want us to produce this kind of documentation, and can we do it? So in Canvas, we can. It's vital to a college's relationship with the U.S. Department of Education and for student financial aid. So this has real effects on the college in that way. It's key to the quality of online education and student outcomes required by the ACCJC standards. So this is how we demonstrate in a very real way that we're not just a bunch of smart people hanging out, but really good things are happening with the students. Don't trust us, trust the evidence. That's what this has to be. This has to demonstrate these concepts in very real ways, okay? And we do that through Canvas. So how do we demonstrate regular substantive interaction? Feedback in a timely manner. So in other words, we respond to their discussion posts, we respond to their emails, we turn back their essays and things like that. Feedback that is not cursory, but is authentic and meaningful. It should, in your feedback, they should get a sense of you as an expert in the field who cares about them as a student. Okay? So it's comparable to face-to-face feedback. This is what they notice about you in person, and this is what they need to sense with you online. Okay? And now the guidelines and suggestions for getting this. It's be clear in your expectations for the students. This starts in the syllabus for the course and continues throughout other communications. So state your expectations of the students in your syllabus, but also state what they can expect in the class, what they're going to learn, how they're going to interact with you, and what they're going to go through. And expect to reinforce those expectations from your syllabus through other means of communication, such as announcements, emails, and everything. So we'll go through those. Provide clear guidelines. Make sure these are repeated and reinforced. That's one of the things you learn early on, that you are going to repeat yourself in announcements, in emails, in other ways throughout the semester in the online course. Just get used to it, because that's part of teaching online. They might or not have gotten the email. They're going to see the announcement, and then they're going to get a reminder when they go through the assignment sheet. They forgot about it, but now they've seen it for the second time. That's what works. So repeat your directions and other vital information in various places in your course, such as Canvas course calendar, the syllabus, or assignment directions. Don't think just because you put it in the assignment that the student understands it. He or she may not have read it carefully, may not have gone over the material. They picked it up, though, in the calendar. Oh, now it's in the assignment. Now I get it, okay? They would expect it in the assignment if they picked it up in the calendar, maybe saw it glanced at it in the announcements. So it has to be reinforced, okay? Use the modules to organize and chunk the information. Again, that's what all of you are doing to one degree or another. That's how I use Pages, but it puts the information together in a sensible manner. Provide students with an online orientation. In other words, what can they expect in Canvas from you for the semester? Okay. Now, going through the inbox and announcements, these are some ideas on how to use them and which option seems to work better. Okay. To email or not to email, yeah, that's the question. Is email the best way to actively engage students? Well, maybe. Okay. When is email not the best contact method? There are times you don't want to touch the stuff. When is email necessary? There are times when you absolutely must use email. So let's go through this. Is email the best way to engage students? No, it's not a matter of one way works, one way doesn't. Under certain circumstances, it does work very well. Under other circumstances, it doesn't work very well. This is something to understand when you're coming to online education. Too many instructors resort to nonstop email. Please be careful with it. Email is a private two-way communication. This is great. It's good for FERPA issues, things like grades and issues with personal information. But can you verify that it is the student who is contacting you? Be aware of that. When we work with Canvas and work in the inbox, we do have some legal cover. If we work through the VVC email and we start getting outside emails that the student that we seem to, there's a good chance that you might be getting emails here and there from a parent or a cousin or somebody else. So be aware that the inbox is effective for personal information. It's considered to be sealed because we do give the student a password and everything else. If they give it out to somebody else, that's their business. But replying to a random email where you have somebody claiming to be somebody, that's not reliable. Group emails are effective in certain cases. In other cases, of course, they're not for personal information. They do reinforce general dissemination of information, reminders and warnings. So you can give a heads up through general email. But there might be better alternatives for engaging the students, such as announcements or the assignment sheets or other things. Your expertise in your field and your knowledge of how the students communicate with you, that is going to be your guiding idea. When is email the necessary contact method for grades, for personal issues, problems, or concerns? Things like access issues and accommodations, those take place through email. Those are not general topics. Those are not something you'd put in an announcement regarding a particular student's accommodation. Anything related to FERPA, in other words, any kind of federal Education Right to Privacy Act issue goes through email. That's considered to be a safe way to communicate with the student, and you are protected. If the student gave out their email or gave out their password, that's his or her business. But you don't want to respond to a random email through VVC, no matter what the content says. Okay? Canvas Inbox is a necessity. The inbox is a closed system that protects you and your students. It's a way we protect ourselves from, acute accusations of FERPA violations, but it also protects the student's privacy from a cousin or an aunt or their mom or dad from interfering with their privacy. Okay? When email is not the best contact method, when there are multiple students asking a similar question, such things as ask the professor discussion areas, that's something I've used before with varying degrees of success, is a better way to disseminate general questions. And those, by the way, those questions you might hear in emails that come up over and over again, take those in mind when you start designing the class for the next semester. Okay? An announcement might cover a common question. So you could have an ask the professor discussion area, or you could address the issues that you get in email through announcements. Okay? When you're not receiving needed responses from individuals or groups, okay, remind them to use their student at VVC email. An emailed announcement might get read more often. An announcement at the top of the class might work sometimes, but an email might work better. You can get a sense of your students and what they're replying to and the nature of the communications. When you want to convey content, this is instructional content. In other words, on sociology, on history, on English, or something like that, emails are not the best. E-lectures, such as videos or podcasts or things like that, tend to work far better for this. Instructor original content is a required part of REC or RSI. You do have to produce your own content, and email isn't the best way to distribute it. And this is something that really applies probably to me more than most folks. I tend to write wordy emails, so that's probably not the best way to do things. Short, punchy emails tend to be better. Okay? So not a great way to communicate if you write long emails. Remember that students learn in a variety of ways. So that's why things like announcements, discussions, emails, and other methods tend to work better, okay, depending on the context. What about WebAdvisor emails? These can be very useful under a limited circumstance. It's recommended that you make use of the WebAdvisor email only as needed. For example, contacting the waitlisted students, and these students are not yet in Canvas. So if they're on the wait list, you're going to use WebAdvisor email, okay? Or sending out pre-course information. So if you want to send out an announcement before you've opened the course, go into WebAdvisor, okay? Copies of your WebAdvisor emails are sent to your Outlook account. So again, you're outside of the Canvas universe here. So be aware of that. It will go to your VVC Outlook account, but you don't want to keep the students there, okay? It's recommended that you create Outlook folders and store these outside of the CMS messages as more evidence of REC. This is one of those things you can do this before the semester or at the end, but still organize it. Hold on to it. So in case the ACCJC looks at your class. WebAdvisor doesn't allow email attachments. Keep that in mind. Okay? So Canvas Inbox does, and Announcements does. Students whose email or who email you in Outlook. This is not good. While we want students and you to use the Canvas Inbox, there are times when that may not happen. Here's a suggestion. Copy and paste the email and your response in Canvas Inbox. So if they send it to you at your VVC account, copy their email and then go over to the inbox and basically walk them over, essentially electronically, to Inbox and send them the message in Inbox. Inform them that this is the best way to communicate for the course, okay? Because again, it keeps it all in one place. Respond and reply to the student in Outlook, directing them to Canvas. Model what you want your students to do. Save the Outlook emails in a folder for that course, okay? And a little bit more about announcements right now. Course announcements can serve various purposes as reminders, notifications in teaching moments, okay? These are times that we know when they can learn something, and you can use the announcements when you see the class getting stuck at something. The announcements work very well. In the March 2017 ACCJC visit, which is now legendary, they commented about the announcements. Many faculty's announcements were not substantive. In other words, essays due next week, do this, do that. They're not valuable. Nor that they provide evidence of teaching and learning. That's how you want to use announcements. Now, they can be short and sharp to a degree, but they should move the students from one place to another in their learning. Okay? Announcements sent to students as an email tell the students to enable this feature in notifications in Canvas. That should be part of the orientation you walk the students through at the start, that their notifications are turned on to get their emails or to get their inbox and get announcements in a timely manner. How can we use announcements for teaching and learning moments? Provide general feedback after discussion or an assessment. In other words, bring the discussion together in an announcement, what we've learned at this point, how we are moving forward, so the students get an idea of progress through your course, a summative statement or general review of what they've learned so far. Remind students of the syllabus materials they seem to be forgetting. They remind them, okay? Presentation of content, due dates, and etiquette. Those aspects, those are not just the due date. This is how we communicate, this is how we are in a college class, and this is what we're going to be working on now. Providing resources or resource information to students. Did you know these are reminders and referrals to various resources that they can use. Okay. Announcements as self-reflection and analysis. Rolling over your announcements provides you with the ability in a new semester to see whether there are elements repeated all the time. You will notice that some things you keep announcing as you move students from step A to step B to step C through a class. Are there issues with the subject? Do they get confused over this? There are going to be certain aspects of announcements that they can learn from. There should be clarity in it, lack of a college level prep for students. So you want to keep this in mind, what level your students are at, and you need to move them to a college level behavior or college level emotional preparation for the class. You can edit existing or rollover announcements to fit the current semester. So spending some time editing them, and you can set them for a date so that they're released during the second, the third, the fourth week, but you can edit them before they go out for the new semester. So, and you can delete announcements as you need to each semester, okay? And timely substantive feedback. Let me cover this quickly. Some ideas need repetition. Is your return policy in your syllabus? In other words, how soon am I going to give feedback on the discussions, on the essays, on the projects? Do you use a rubric? And I want to give you a hint that I would strongly urge you to use a rubric. I know these seem systematic and overly formal, but the students like to use them as a roadmap for how they're going to compose certain assignments, or address certain issues, but also how they're looked at. So part of using a rubric is making sure the rubric is not your full assessment. It is a way for students to set expectations for the nature of your assessment. Your assessment can be both partly in the rubric and partly part of your comments to the student about what they've actually done here. So I strongly encourage you to use a rubric along with your own assessment. Use them both together. Do you repeat your information? Because you really, really, really should. So what is a reasonable turnaround time? So set up expectations for them. Depending on the length of your online or hybrid course, these are guidelines, okay, generally. For discussions, 3 to 4 days you should be checking in there. For essays or essay exams, about a week. For papers and other long written assignments, about a week is a good idea. That's what they're going to tend to see from most instructors. For hot projects and comprehensive skill demonstrations, these are the more involved projects that they do, about a week. That, if you get it back within a day, then they don't think you really considered it. But if you don't get it back, about a week, if you take about 2 weeks, maybe a month, then they've forgotten about what they've done. So about a week, a matter of 3 days to 7 days is generally a good idea. It shows consideration. It shows respect for the student. You're within a reasonable time frame. But it also it tells them you took some time considering what they've written or what they've created. And then lastly, what we'll cover, I will cover with you some of the grading tools on papers in SpeedGrader especially. We'll cover rubrics. I think they're a good thing. Okay, linking courses to the SLOs in rubrics. This is something that is a little sticky. How to connect your SLOs to your rubrics. And if you can get this done, especially in your sandbox, you can use it, and suddenly SLOs, even though they are so systematic, become easy to evaluate and to reflect upon. How to comment on student works authentically. In other words, this authentically sounds like a buzzword, but it really means, how are you as a specialist in counseling? How do you see this situation? How can they learn from you as a librarian on these research assignments? How about as an English faculty member? That's what they mean by authenticity. Comment boxes are part of SpeedGrader. Video comments, those are part of SpeedGrader. And voice comments are. Other tools are available in Canvas and in Turnitin.com. I caution you against putting things in Turnitin.com. But I caution you against not using Turnitin.com. Use Turnitin.com, but I would caution you against putting the feedback in Turnitin.com. But that's up to you. That's your judgment. Okay. So that's what I wanted to go over. I was hoping this would be a 10-minute video. Obviously, it's not. These are the really the guidelines that you should be using as you are developing your course now in the third week, and what you should be able to recognize, not only in online instruction, but in the course you are creating at this time. Okay? Take care, you guys.